Welcome back to Science and Sports. Today's guest is someone who's pushing the boundaries of what it means to train the mind and the body at the highest level. Anthony Allegrino is a strength and conditioning coach at Colgate University and the founder of AA Peak Performance. He worked across the pro level, NCAA Division I and III, and also in the private sector. So he brings a well-rounded, deeply integrated approach to performance and recovery. In this episode, we explore how Anthony builds resilient mindsets, views the body through a holistic lens, and applies the Tissue-Remodeling-Model to help clients heal and level up. It's packed with insights, whether you're an athlete, coach, or just someone looking to move and feel better. If you're enjoying the podcast, make sure to like, follow, and share it with someone who needs to hear this. Have fun in the episode. This podcast is presented by Like Me, your partner for social media and online marketing from Weiden, and Praxis im Salzhaus, your contact for physiotherapy and health in Altenstadt. Anthony, thank you so much for joining me today on my podcast, Science and Sports. You are my 30th guest already, and I heard you are currently working in New York. So thanks for joining me. Can you give me a little introduction, a little background of yourself, please?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. I'm Anthony Allegrino. I'm a strength coach currently at Colgate University. I own my own business, AA Peak Performance. I've worked in professional, I've worked with Division I, worked at the Division III, and I've worked in the private sector. But yeah, it's been a journey and learned from some great people along the way and try to give back as much as I can to the people that I've learned from, to give back to players and coaches and anyone who's asked questions or wants to learn something.
That's awesome. We got in touch with a friend of yours, Mike Ederer. I already had him on the podcast as well, so I'm really excited to talk to you. We discussed it a little bit up front, what we wanted to talk in today's episode. I would just start right into it if that's okay for you.
Yeah, that's fine.
The first thing I wanted to have a little talk with you and to know a little bit about is the mindset of an athlete. As a former player, obviously, you and me, we both know how important it is to be on the right track and to set out goals and to work towards those goals. But what does building a mindset mean to you, especially?
Yeah. Building a mindset to me is definitely changed over the years. Um, I was fortunate enough to work with a strength coach by the name of Brajesh Patel. He's the Quinnipiac strength conditioning coach for hockey, men's and women's basketball. I did an internship with him in 2020, and he was like really the first person I worked with that, you know, showed me that there's importance of the way that you talk about yourself and the way that you talk about others and the way that a team speaks about itself and the importance of thinking positively. So when I went away from there, I went through some self-healing journeys of my own, and that's when I kind of got into positive self-talk and journaling and meditation, and I started to really open my eyes about it because I saw the changes in my life that started to happen from doing those kinds of things. Even to the point where it was like the amount of sets and reps I could do in the gym was much more because the amount of stress in my life was gone because I wasn't always thinking negative. So I mean I think it's the most important thing when it comes to strength conditioning, um, and just anything with daily life. If your mind isn't right, I always say the body won't follow suit.
You said it right in the beginning with the example you just mentioned with the strength training. If you do a set or if you do a maximum lift and you visualize that you can achieve it and you have the right preparation for it, that's, I think, one of the best examples that you really can achieve more than you think. And the other way around, if you are like just doing the sets, if you're just lifting, then you can feel the difference that you're not able to focus 100%. So I'm right there with you. What do you think are those common misconceptions, or like some blockades, some blocks you mentioned that people are facing, and how did, for example, you, if you want to talk about it, or how is it possible for normal people to overcome the stress and to build this better mindset?
Yeah, yeah. I think you said, what are people going through daily that might make them negative or down. I think we as humans, we all have been through something in our life, and you know, we all have a story, and um, we're all going through things daily, whether it's like stressing about paying bills or stressing about, getting a job, or stressing about, if you're an athlete, being on the first line rather, opposed to being on the fourth line, and stressing about playing. And I think we live in a world of kind of like negativity, like where we applaud, making fun of someone or something like that. We don't really applaud, you know, making someone happy and uplifting someone. And you see it when someone gets success, when you're there for someone through the negative times. And then as soon as they get success, it's like, hey, how do we tear this guy down? So, I grew up kind of in a negative environment, and I think I didn't realize the impact that it had on the way that I viewed the world.
Mhm.
And when I started to do things like go to therapy, I started to journal, I started to meditate, I started just to listen to podcasts of people who were successful and how they changed their mindset. It's almost like the glasses started to come off, and I started to see um, just positivity. It was weird. I don't even know how to explain it in like other than like it was like my world changed just from making my mind change. I think when you're looking at it from like sets and reps aspect, like you talked about, like, oh, you're going to hit your one rep max, and you're like, I don't know if I can do this. Well, I always tell my athletes, well, there's no reason to do it if you don't think you can do it. Like you've already said to yourself, you can't do it. So what makes you think you're going to be able to do it?
Yeah.
So I always try to say, hey, let's have a positive attitude when we're going through towards this stuff. And it's and especially in sports and college athletics, and even in pro sports is even much bigger. Uh, it's hard to change people's mindset and attitudes towards certain things because it's like cool to be negative, right? It's not cool to be positive.
Yeah, got it. And I think a big part also is that the mindset can change a lot, like we just discussed. And I think that people, and also obviously athletes, they don't have to be, no, everyone, sorry, I have to backtrack. It's not a bad thing that you are in a like unhealthy relationship, or that it's not going your way in school or in sports, that it's nothing to be ashamed of, and that it's not a bad thing to go to therapy or to talk to a mental coach. I mean, that's why they exist, that's why they're here for. And I think that if more people realize that it's not a sign of weakness, it's just that you have someone you can talk to, and that will change a lot, obviously. I had also on the podcast a psychologist, and he's also the mental coach from the Eisbären Berlin, who just won the first division here in German ice hockey. And he also said that it's nothing to be afraid of to talk to someone, and nothing to be ashamed of, because I think, like you said, it's easy to talk about negatives, and if somebody achieves something, I think more people want to bring you down again, in case or in and don't want to like, yeah, congratulate you or be happy for you. And that's like, I think, two big things that have to change, because like I said, we have to turn the things around so everything goes into the positive way.
Yeah, no. Um, that guy you had on your podcast, I didn't catch his name off the top. It cut out, but um, I would totally agree with that. Like, I used to be when I first started going to therapy, I used to be like very, I'm not going to tell anyone. I got to sneak into the therapist office at school. And then as I I got, later into life and doing it, I didn't really care. I'm like, yeah, I go to therapy. And then, you get athletes when you're trying to build that buy-in, they're like, you go to therapy? I'm like, yeah, yeah, and there's no problem with it. And then I think when they see someone their age, um, being open and vulnerable, they're more susceptible to gain trust with you and say, hey, maybe it's okay to do it and it's all right to step outside the box.
I think also, especially for the real top 1% of the athletes, where every step what they take is under the microscope and being looked at by the whole world, it's so hard to really um, keep track of everything. And I'm sure that they have someone who they can talk to you in private to just talk about the different things going on in life. Because there are so many examples of players who failed under immense pressure or had some stuff brought up in public. And if you really have someone who you can trust and who you can really work with, that's like what makes also a little difference in a positive way. And then we're at the point every little percent you can gain, especially as an athlete, makes you better. And yeah, let's say, for example, in ice hockey, it makes the team better. So everyone will benefit from that little 1 or 2% what you can gain. Anthony, to change the topics a little bit and to talk a little bit about the body, you and me both as strength and conditioning coaches, I want to talk a little bit about the holistic view of the body and how you incorporate that into your daily work.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd love to talk about it. You talked about Mike here in the beginning of it, and I'm on the phone with Mike daily, and we're talking about like how we can look at strength conditioning in a different aspect. And I think we both understand that the holistic approach in strength conditioning, it's not the most ordinary way to go. Um, it's not like true strength conditioning where it's just you're just looking at sets and reps. For myself, I I look at like what we were just talking about, right? When I was at Quinnipiac, the first time I went down there and interned, I couldn't do the sets and reps and the amount of volume, so the amount of stress that like the team was doing and that my mentor wanted me to do like with the team. And I would have like instant like anxiety or like kind of I'd feel like really panicky from because my nervous system was so overloaded. So then when I, started going to therapy, um, and I started journaling and meditating, I went back down 2 years later, and the amount of, you know, sets, reps, the volume, everything that I could do was like tenfold. And I had like this oh crap moment where I was like, so maybe I should be looking at stress as opposed to um, looking at, oh, I just need to add 5 more pounds. So when I started looking at it through that lens, I started looking at like athletes, like, well, hey, maybe that athlete, can't, um, is going through something and can't tolerate that. So I started adding like questionnaires to look at stress for that lens of it. And then the other side is, you know, the nervous system, uh, how that impacts the nervous system and how, uh, you know, that will then impact the way that you perform on the ice or whatever sport you play and even daily life. And then then you add nutrition into that and how's your nutrition? What are you eating? So, when I say like holistically, it's kind of looking at everything and trying to add into one instead of just looking at the one thing.
Yeah, especially when you look at everything, comes a little bit also along with the last sentence I said about the mindset that wherever you can gain 1 or 2%, you just make yourself a whole lot better. And that accumulates over the season, for example, and then you're a way better player, you're a way better person. Yeah, doing along those lines. You just mentioned the nervous system into the whole holistic approach.
Hmm.
Also, I think emotions, breathing, like you said, visualization play also a big role in the health and the performance. How do those systems play into that? You just mentioned a little bit, but I'm curious in how they are working hand in hand to make everything go smoother.
Yeah, I mean, so if you think like the way that I view it and the way that I've kind of like viewed it on myself and other athletes is if that person's always sympathetic driven and cannot like relax and get to parasympathetic, you're gonna have that problem where that person's running uh always like too stressed, can't do too much volume. When you add a lot of volume, they're gonna feel stressed, they're gonna feel like tense. So one way that I looked at that, and a lot of this I've done with Mike is we've gone down rabbit holes about, how do we relax the body away from strength conditioning? So that's teaching, one kind of tie in the visualization for like what we talked about in the beginning is the mindset. Like, hey, this is what I'm gonna do. This is how I'm gonna be better. You know, I visualize myself doing things and it might not happen right away, but like 3 years later, the same thing, the way I said, uh, you know, it worked. I believe in writing stuff down. I wrote down a truck that I wanted to buy, and three it was 2 years later, I ended up buying it. And then when you add in meditation, I think meditation is a powerful tool that helps you. You can use it in many different ways, but I really think it helps teach the body how to relax and get more into a parasympathetic state. Um, so I try to add like the visualization like daily for like my athletes. Hey, like just think about stuff like what do you want to be? Where do you want to be? Like who do you see yourself as? Um, the meditation, you add that during season a lot, but I try to get my guys, um, you know, try to get them on meditation so it becomes a daily habit for them. A prime example is the guy we were talking about before we hopped on the podcast was Lucas Reichel, like came to me, couldn't sleep. We were giving him every supplement. We could give him magnesium, you name it, anything to like try to help him relax after games because obviously your cortisol spikes. Um, I just gave him some frequency. I didn't give him like a headspace, like a guided meditation. I said, here, listen to this, just close your eyes and try to de-stress and let the body really relax. And he came to me and was like, hey man, this is like the best sleep I've ever had. Um, so I think when your nervous system is super tapped or like super sympathetic, you can't perform the way you want. Obviously, you want to be like able to get super sympathetic, but for those who can't get to parasympathetic, um, I think that's the goal of like the holistic approach, like not to always be a high driver and try to teach how to use and go through peaks and valleys.
Do you think it makes or it is a good idea? Let's say, for example, if then also a player is not really believing that good nutrition is benefiting their performance, because I always tell them, okay, then let's take it a step back and imagine the whole different scenario, the opposite. If you eat unhealthy for a long period of time, you will feel that your performance just goes down. And I think that's well, in my experience, I can get to the athletes because they know that is true. So they believe me and they have the trust in me. And we built obviously a good relationship then, that they know that if I'm telling them to try it out, that they will gain 1 or 2%. Do you think you can apply the same model with the visualization, with the meditation too?
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. I've seen it myself, right? I for the last a year I've kind of slipped out of doing it, and not because I wanted to. I was developed some unhealthy habits and I've seen how different I've been with it. So, and then when I'm like, okay, then I'll get a consistent streak where it's like, oh, I'll meditate and I feel so much better. And when I journal, and then it's like, I think, trying to teach an athlete that, because that's not normal. Like someone, hey, just, meditate, relax. People are like, what medicine can I take? How fast can I get over this anxiety? It's like, well, how about you sit with yourself and figure out what's going on, with the meditation and naturally teach yourself how to relax. I see there's a lot of like
Mhm.
companies coming out now with things that kind of like force you to meditate unknowingly, where it kind of like through frequencies, through your wrists and ankles and all that, um, it goes, it sends like frequencies through your body and it helps you relax, right? Not saying they don't work, but I'm saying like all that is meditation, but in a rushed, forced meditation.
Ja,
So I think a lot of people like run to that instead of just saying, "Hey, I'm gonna be disciplined, I'm gonna be consistent, and I'm gonna meditate, I'm gonna journal, I'm gonna do the things to learn about myself." I feel like a lot of people don't really want to know themselves. So when they have to do that and things start to come up, they're like, nah, I'm not doing this anymore. But, you know, you talked about nutrition, right? Again, I think that is super important as well. When I worked with the Blackhawks, I didn't realize how important nutrition was until like we blood tested all the athletes that came in, and every single athlete was like undernutrition in something. There was whether it was vitamin D, vitamin A, or like magnesium, their cortisol levels were up. It was really interesting to learn. So that's like when I started to change my like right the holistic approach. Like, okay, well, obviously if your mental doesn't follow, the body won't. But then
ja,
if you don't have the right nutrition, that can make you stressed out. So it's like, how do we find a good balance for everyone, for one person, because everyone's different, right? Not everyone's the
ja.
same.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. And right with nutrition, I think there's also the recovery aspect, sleep aspect, what plays a huge role in obviously gaining performance and maintaining a good, healthy body during competitive season. I would love to talk more in depth about everything we just discussed, but there's also one more big topic, interesting topic I want to address, which is the biobanding, the tissue remodeling model. Can you
Yeah.
give me can you clarify it for me and
Yeah,
for my
yeah, yep.
listeners what it is, why is it important, and just like a little introduction in those topics.
Yeah. So the tissue remodeling phase is something, obviously strength conditioning, we steal things from people we see and we like. I learned about it through my first internship for Zesh, and then I worked with a guy named by the name of Stephen Volek, where he kind of taught me the same ways, like, hey, we need to slow things down before we speed them up. And then there was a guy by the name of Jim Snyder. He was worked for Wisconsin hockey, now he's with basketball. Um, and he wrote like a tissue remodeling like article, like, hey, this is how I do it. So what it is you're trying to get the tissues, right, to go from
Mhm.
not be short and tight. You want them to get long, elongated and parasympathetic, right? So after a season, what happens is your muscles become short and they become sympathetic. And what the goal of the off season in the early off season for me is to try to teach the body how to become parasympathetic and how to build a base. I think a lot of guys in the field, and athletes, they see the super sexy thing on Instagram where, oh my God, look, he's doing a plyo jump, and oh my God, and not that there's anything wrong with that, but think about it, like in the sport of hockey, you're in casts for now young kids are in all year long, but they're in 8 months of their life, right? So you're losing range of motion, you're losing you're developing unhealthy patterns, which develop compensation patterns, right? So the goal of it is to slow, slow things down by like working on eccentrics, working on ISOs, doing contralateral lateral circuits. Uh, I read gyms, and then I've learned some stuff from Cal Dietz, and then B, so it's I took it and put it on steroids, right? Um I did Cal's like little contralateral circuit to warm up, and then I went into long duration isos
Mm-hmm.
as another warm up, and then I went into a 1 by 20. And if you don't know what 1 by 20 is, 1 by 20 is one exercise for like 20 reps, and you're adding a tempo, right? So my main goal is try to stress the body as much as I can early on in the off
Mm-hmm.
season to teach the body how to get used to that as we add more stress onto the body, right?
Yeah.
I think there was a thing that me and Mike talked about 2 years ago. There was a lot of Achilles problems in hockey, right? And one thing that we saw is like these coaches, they want to sprint early off season, they want to jump. And it's like, okay, well, your body just went through all this stuff during the season. Like, how about we teach the body how to just build a foundation? And then
Mm-hmm.
once you know how to absorb force and slow down a lot of load, then we can start like, hey, producing a lot of force and trying to jump with weight or jumping with bands or doing depth drops to jumps. And, I think that's something that me and Mike are ever working on. We do it a little different, but we still go back and forth on the phone every day about, hey, like, how can this be better for the next phase? And then, hey, next year, what are you going to try with this? So it's like, it's always changing. And if someone shows me something that's even better, I'll probably scrap whatever I do and try to add it in and try to figure out a way I can make it even better.
Yeah. So, but you mean by that? So you build your foundation and just add on top and on top, like this pyramid, for example, and it doesn't have to be implemented by day one that you have like everything. You just step by step add additional things in off season, for example. You start building the foundation, you go up to the maximum training, you go up to the explosiveness, to the plyo, to the
Yep.
sprints and everything. And also then I think this approach really good benefit also for the longevity, especially for the younger players who will have a long career in front of them, so it doesn't overload them each and every day for the whole summer. And I think that's also a big part with the connection of this tissue remodeling and also the longevity, right?
Yeah. Yeah, again, like I look at myself not as a strength coach. I kind of look at myself as a stress manager.
Mm-hmm.
So in the beginning of the early off season, I want to stress you out and I want to stress you out all summer long. And then, you know, going into preseason, in season, then you just become a stress manager of like how to manage load, when to load these
Uh-huh.
guys, when not to. Should we do a Saturday night lift? Should we not? Hey, we're traveling this day. Should we lift on this day? So then realistically, when you look at it, like when I kind of zoomed out and I was like, all right, well, let me try to stress these guys as much as I could. And I learned this isn't something I thought of. I've learned this from the people that I've worked with along the way, that I'm very grateful for. And then I kind of just like through conversations with Mike and being on my own and on my own, in gyms, I've just tried different things. And I said, hey, let me try this. And when I worked at Alaska, I mean, I had, some guys put on 15 pounds of muscle or of body weight, and then they dropped. I was like 4 or 5% of body fat. And, I was getting texts about guys saying, hey, this is the best I've ever felt on the ice. And it was crazy to me to hear that because I was like, oh wow, it's working. And then, being at Colgate, I worked with a guy, um, obviously hockey was my priority team there, but I worked with some other, but I was kind of running the same system, but in a different method at Colgate with different teams. I had a kid on track and field put on 15 pounds in a month and a half. Same thing with golf. I had a couple guys. Um, I think I had one guy put on 15, one put on 10, another kid put on 7 mile an hour club head speed. Um, coming down. For those who don't know, when you're coming down, it's when you hit the ball on the backswing. On your downswing, it's when you come up or drive through the ball. That's where the 7 mile an hour is coming from.
Mhm.
And then I had a guy on hockey. He weighed in right at the end of preseason. It was 207, and he usually played at 195, 190, and he said it's the best he's ever felt. So then, I'm on the phone with Mike saying, "Man, like we're on to something. Like it's working, but we need to fine tune a bunch of stuff." So then I would say it's still in the fine tuning era. So uh I mean I could, the rabbit holes that I've gone down with Mike about fascia and the psoas and stress, you know, that's how we've tried to tie it all into the holistic approach.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Also, because you said you try everything out and you see that you might be onto something, how that will evolve in the future. And I hope that you will keep me updated on your findings. Before I want to wrap up the episode, I have two more questions. One would be, what are your daily non-negotiables for a good mind and body health? And the second one would be like a personal one to you. What advice would you give someone who is in pain, who isn't in the best health condition, or is stuck at something?
Yeah, so the daily non-negotiables, for me it would be meditation, and this is for me personally, but like journaling, uh positive self-talk, um going to the gym. Every day you're supposed to go to the gym. Eating healthy, doesn't matter, you know, if you're feeling craving some junk food. I try to treat my body like a temple. You only get one, so I try to do the best things I can. And I always say, if I'm preaching it to my athletes, then I should be doing it, right?
Yeah,
So that's something that's really big with me. Uh, and then on the other coin that you said, what advice would I give someone who's going through something? Whether it's pain, want to get going, lack of motivation. I would say if it's pain related, definitely seek out to someone who might know more than you, whether it's, and it's okay to do that, just to say, hey, like this guy knows more than me at this, and be willing to listen. And, also kind of look at what you're doing. Is it something that you're doing in life? Are you saying, hey, like, I'm not eating right, or I don't feel good, but you're not eating right, or like my mind feels like junk, but you don't think right, and the stuff you consume on social media isn't good. So I think it's just being real with yourself. I think that goes a long way.
yeah. I think that's some key things you just said there, some big words. I don't really have anything to add to that, to be honest. So thank you so much for joining me today. That you find some time
Thank you
that we
for
could
having
make
me.
it happen with the time difference and everything. And I hope you can give me some new informations if we will talk again maybe in the future, and keep me updated on all those things going on. And I wish you all the best. Like I said, thanks for the insights, and I'll talk to you pretty soon, I hope.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Appreciate being on here, and of course I'll be in touch with anything.
Would be awesome. So thanks again.
Thanks for listening to the show. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow the podcast, leave a rating or comment, and share it with someone who loves sports science. And for more content, follow me on Instagram at science_in_sports_. See you in the next episode.